Hi, Emma here, and today I'm bringing you a video for World Mental Health Day. It happens on the 10th of October every year, and this year is 2020, and the theme is, it's been chosen by the World Federation for Mental Health. It is mental health for all. So what I'm going to be talking about today is not so much where to find a counsellor, because that's going to vary from place to place, and also you have the ability, depending on where you are and your situation, to self-refer, to be referred via a doctor or through a charity in a lot of cases. So I'm not going to be going through that part or how to find people on directories. This is more to do with the actual practical workings of working with a counsellor or another therapist online. So I'm going to be talking about some of the benefits of working online that you may not have thought about particularly in any depth. So for example, working online brings you the convenience of not having to commute, so you don't have to worry about timings when it comes to public transport or trying to find that parking space. And you've also got that convenience and flexibility, fitting counselling sessions around the other things that are happening in your life. So you don't have to have that time for commuting, padding in and eating up that time where you can be doing other things. Also, there is the ability a lot of the time to have support in a time and a place that is convenient to you. So you don't necessarily have to leave the house. It could be that you work from your car, for example, or out walking, because some people hold sessions that way as well. Geographical remoteness isn't a problem. You don't have to travel miles to see someone in a town or a city that could be miles away from where you are based. Physical mobility is not a problem as well, because that can be quite an impacting thing for a lot of people. A lot of the time you can schedule sessions that suit you more, well, better suit you. So you have that ability of flexibility and choice available to you as well. You also have the autonomy to choose which technology you think is going to work best for you. So, for example, you may wish to work online via telephone, via internet conferencing, which would look very much like this, via email, that still happens, or via a text-based system, a bit like a chat room, for example, or a encrypted texting service. You can get the support you need whilst you are needing to be social distancing, especially if you've in quarantine or because of health concerns you've needed to not go out. So you still have the ability to have help from where you are. Also, you don't have to face the kind of stigma that can be associated with mental health problems. If you are travelling to somewhere, if there's a waiting room, there isn't that sense of shame. You just connect and begin at the scheduled time, of course. So let's have a think about some of the considerations you need to factor in when working online instead of face-to-face with someone. How comfortable are you when using technology? Do you have access to your own device to use, be it a laptop or a smartphone, or do you need to use one that is shared between you and someone else? And if that is the case, what can you do to ensure that that is private to you for those sessions? Also have a think about location-wise where you're going to be having that session from. It may also be that you're in a house where there's lots of bustle. It's really difficult to have personal private space. So have a think about what room or rooms you can base yourself in for that online session. So have a think about the thinness of the walls. Is your voice going to be overheard? Also the volume of your device, is that likely to be overheard? And if you're concerned about the volume, lots of people will use headphones plugged into their device, but you do need to be aware of your own voice carrying as well, to be able to ensure and maintain that confidentiality on your side. Also have a think about whether you really would prefer to work face to face, and that might be a different setup. It might not always be possible where you are, but do ask, because you will be told either way what the situation is at the given time. Also have a think about any kind of considerations that the person working with you would need to know. So for example, if you have a hearing impairment, or things that they need to be aware of, any kind of health concern, diabetes, anything like that, so that if you were to fall sick during a session, they could contact the blue light services, the emergency services for you, and also let them know what your medical history when it comes to that is, so they can pass on relevant information so that they can look after you in a more informed way. Also have a think about not only emergency services. A lot of the time we need to also have details of your GP for safeguarding reasons. If you're feeling that you need help and are in distress in the moment, we need to phone through to your GP with your permission to see if we can contact them that way. Also, a lot of the time working online, which is slightly different to face-to-face, we'd often ask for a nominated emergency contact. So for example, if you were to not turn up on time for your session and you hadn't mentioned that you'd be late or counselling, then that flags up a risk to us. So we would need to contact them, and we wouldn't be telling them what we're discussing with you. Please do tell them before you nominate them as well, so it's not out of the blue, just so they can help locate you and check whether you are all right and safe and well, because it's about care for your well-being throughout. And also have a consideration for the stability of the internet connection or the phone signal where you are, because it can be really frustrating for both parties if the signal dips, you suddenly lose contact. It can be unnerving. And often, if working via video conference, having your phone number or another way of contacting you is plan B. You may also notice that when working online, as with a lot of video conferencing, that you find that you tire sooner. We hold a more focused gaze on the screen, especially if we're working on a small screen, than we would be using when face-to-face. And it can be quite tiring on our eyes, and some people get really quite surprised at how tiring they can feel, how tired they can feel after a video conference session. So that's something to be aware of too. Now, what I'm going to be talking through next is basically some information that I send to the clients that I'm working with. I'm going to share that with you today, so that whether you work with me or somebody else, you've got a reasonable understanding and expectation of what expectations to have when working online in this way. So I've covered some of it already, but I'll go through my list here. So basically being aware and checking that your internet and phone signal is good where you're going to be talking from, that you're not going to be interrupted, and if there's any people in the household who have, for example, streaming TV programs or films or gaming, just ask them to grace you the hour for the session so that you're not fighting for bandwidth with them, because that can really affect both the visuals and the sound quality, so it doesn't break up. So to make sure that you can both see and hear each other when working together. Also have a think about whether, yeah, basically, like I said a moment ago, your choice of room, your choice of location to speak through from, so that sound isn't going to carry either from your device or your voice, and also that you're not going to be interrupted. So for example, friends, relatives, kids, pets barging in and causing ruckus or distraction. This is meant to be a confidential discussion between you and the counsellor or other therapist, and that can be quite a distraction if they're breaking something along the way during that session for you to handle. Now if it's, for example, it's your dog, it's asleep at your feet, it's not going to move, that's fine. Just, it's down to temperament, but please be aware and factor that in, because it can be quite a shock when you haven't factored that in, and it can happen. Regardless of which device you're using, be it a mobile phone or a laptop, have it plugged in if you can. So, and also have it switched on at the wall, because I've made that mistake once. I'm not going to do that again. So have charge, make sure you're not going to run out of battery or charge. And if you're out and about, have a think about maybe having a juice pack or some sort of external thing that you can charge your mobile device from as well. Because, for example, if working via video conferencing, if this goes down, more often than not, phoning you instead is the plan B. So we can either continue via phone from that point, or see if we can resolve the technical issue. You've got the choice to carry on via video conferencing or via phone from that point on. Having a drink of water or mug of something is often a good idea to have, because when you're talking a lot, especially if you're not used to it, then that can really leave your mouth and your throat feeling dry, and it's quite helpful to just have a sip ready for when you can carry on. So yeah, having something to drink, and also if you have a coughing fit, you're going to need water, especially even if you're in a dry environment as well. So that's another reason why it can be good. Also, if you're likely to become emotional, have some tissues nearby, so pre-prep that way, so that you're not, ooh, and then you don't have them to hand. Just have them prepared beforehand. And also, when we're talking on video calls, I tend to find your eyes get a bit dry. It's that intensity of the gaze looking at the screen, especially if it's a small screen. So quite often we can feel tired sooner than we would if working face to face. Now, after a session has come to an end, it's often a good idea to get up and have a little stretch and a move around, especially when working on screen, because we can sit quite rigidly for a long time without moving, and then we really feel it afterwards. So make sure where you are is comfortable to work from, and also have a good stretch and a move around afterwards. A lot of people find that going for a short walk afterwards can be really helpful, and generally having that little bit of me time before you move on to the next thing, just to allow yourself to settle, can be a really good thing as well. Now, when being online, there is something called the online disinhibition effect, and this can play out also when working with a counsellor or another therapist online, in video conferencing, for example, and even on the phone. In fact, all of the ways that we can work online. So that would be via text, so like a encrypted text messaging service or a chat room kind of environment as well. Basically that sense of anonymity, I knew I was going to struggle with this one. Being anonymous, there we go. not being recognised. That can sometimes embolden us to say more than we would otherwise say and share if working face to face. So if I find that I'm working with someone and I notice that they start to overshare and disclose things that they wouldn't normally be prepared to share at that point when working face to face, I would consciously step in to manage and slow down the pace of the session so they don't overshare and think, oh, I wasn't going to say that yet, I can't take it back, because that can be quite an overwhelming feeling when that happens. So I'm here to do my best, as other counsellors and therapists are, to help regulate that pace for you so that the online disinhibition effect doesn't play out in a way that feels really uncomfortable for you. Okay, before I wrap up, I'm just going to touch on the legal jurisdiction side. So basically, regardless of where the counsellor or other therapist is based, we work according to the law of the land where you, the client, are. So for me, I happen to live in Wales in the UK, so I'd be following and working according to the laws of the land as they currently stand in England and Wales. If you live somewhere else, then it's going to be the laws of the land where you are. And that's kind of where it can get a bit complicated, because basically each different place often has its own requirements for doing counselling or mental health related work, and the person that is to be working with you needs to have met the requirements where you are as opposed to where they are. So that can get interesting and particularly messy if they haven't considered that yet. So lack of awareness is not a legitimate excuse for illegal or legally questionable practice. So it can often be, even though it's online and you can pick from anyone who's able to work online, it's often quite a good idea to pick someone in your locale, in your location, so that there's no complications when it comes to the legal jurisdiction side. For example, over in the States, each state has its own laws and legislation to do with working with people there. It can get quite interesting around by the borders as well. You get similar in Canada, so they have their own requirements too. As a client, have a think more who's located near you, even if they could be on your doorstep, they could be halfway up the country, but if it's the same country, you're not going to have the concerns about the legal side, and everybody knows how things work in that respect. So I hope you found this video helpful, useful and informative. If you have, please like and subscribe, and if you want to leave a general comment, please comment below. If you'd like to contact me, you can contact me on email, and we can see if we're a good match and whether we'd like to work together.